Welcome back to Morning Express. We're glad you're watching on this Thursday, the 23rd of January, 7:13 a.m. I'm Sophia Wanuna, and joining me in studio is Senator Mandera County Bill Okero, who's also the chair of the Senate Finance Committee. He's talking to us as we discuss, is devolution too costly, and more so about the role of that committee and the counties as they seek to raise money. We've talked and heard about the levies in the different counties that are being raised, and of course protests that have also emanated off of those kind of moves by the county governments. Senator, karibu sana, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I'll start from the role of the committee that you chair. Tell us more about that, because as Kenyans, we rarely get to hear about it. We hear a lot about the National Assembly's Finance and Public Investment Committees, you know, them probing different issues. They'll sit down and have sessions to look into the different issues touching on the taxpayers' money. But when it comes to the Senate and this particular committee, what is the role?
The role of the Finance, Commerce and Economic Affairs Committee of the Senate, as set out in standard orders, is premised on the Article 94 and 96 of the Constitution.
Right.
And among other things, it examines all issues that relate to public finance, including budgets, including all expenditures and revenue raising measures and all those issues that really affect finance, public finance in general. We also have a mandate to look at investments, public investments.
Yes.
And also the tourism still comes under this, public enterprise development.
Yes.
Industrial, the ministries that deal with industries. So
right.
So it's really covers a wide range of issues, but the main focus really is on public finance. And I think that's the mandate.
Okay. How come we've not seen or heard from the committee in terms of the work they're doing? Isn't there no problem? And as far as the public finance, all is well, all the money is doing what it's supposed to be doing?
If you will, our committee focuses more on public finance in relation to counties.
Okay.
If you look at the Constitution, the national government public finance must be tabled in the National Assembly. But like all other, committees of Parliament, we have the powers to really, summon any public institution or any organ of the government anywhere regarding any subject. But there seems to, so we do actually meet and table reports in the Senate regarding the finance on any issues. But again, what I think as Senate we have done more prudently is to avoid duplicating some of the things. For example, on all these issues that are under investigation or under scrutiny in the National Assembly, the same committee also has powers to examine all those things, because for the moment, until we set up something similar to Public Accounts Committee and so forth, this committee is the one that also examines oversight, looks at oversight of public finance. But we avoid situations where things have already been done in National Assembly, we don't duplicate. But otherwise, I think we look at all those things like Division of Revenue Bill, the County Allocation of Revenue Bill, all these things relating to public finance in general, including these issues regarding revenues that have been raised.
Yes.
So we look at all of those.
Okay, and let's talk about that a little. The levies and taxation proposals we are seeing, we've had in Kiambu and the protests there, Mombasa as well, different parts, and we're seeing the counties coming out to come up with ways to raise this money. What is it? Is it in terms of allocation they're not getting enough? Because on the other side, the contrast is we see reports once in a while that money has not been spent that was, disbursed to the counties for work. We also, and we'll get to that in terms of what even gets to the counties is being spent on. But let's first focus on the levies and the efforts we are seeing the counties are putting in place to raise more money and how they are going about it. Is that the right way to?
Very important question. But I want to mention one thing very clearly first before I get to that.
Right.
This is the principles really of the public finance which are provided for in the Constitution in Chapter 12. They're very important because they govern all aspects of public finance. And I just want to mention 2 or 3 things that are very, you'll see really how significant they are.
Right.
One of the most important things with regards to public finance, as per the Constitution, is that there's a requirement for openness and accountability, including public participation. It's one of the main issues that are often being raised. The second is that the system of public finance, both at the national level and the county government, shall promote an equitable society. What does that mean specifically? It says the burden of taxation shall be shared fairly. It also, that actually means that between this generation and the future generations, the burden of taxation, you should not tax this generation for the comfort of the future generations.
Right.
That's basically what it really means. It has to be fair, so that you leave some disposable income in the pockets of people today. So they decide. Governments don't actually have the mandate to tax people the way they want.
Right.
That's why
but
parliaments
we're seeing
are there.
a lot of that. Yeah.
That's why parliaments are there, so that government taxes based on what the people want. If people want a certain level of development, a certain level of services, that's the way people. That's why you find in some countries in the world taxations are 60%, in others are 20%. It depends on what people really want. So that fairness on the burden of taxation is critical. In the same way, it also requires that revenues raised nationally shall be shared equitably. I think that between the 2 governments, and of course expenditures should also promote equitable society.
Okay.
So I think then what happens is that then in short what these principles require is that the burdens and the benefits of the use of resources, including public borrowing, shall be shared equitably. What we are seeing is a situation where we borrow heavily today. So what are we doing? We are going to burden or punish the future generations.
Yes.
If we tax people heavily today, you are punishing the generations of today. That's why in fiscal responsibility, there's need to balance really that, to avoid punishing both generations, really this and tomorrow.
Okay.
The second thing with regards to your question is the powers of the counties to raise revenue. This again is provided for in black and white. What the Constitution says very clearly in section 2 or 3, again in section 2 or 9, is that a county may impose only 3 types of taxes. 1, property tax. This is the property rates and so forth. The second is on entertainment taxes on hotels and bills and so forth. But the third is any other tax that it is authorized to impose by an act of parliament. In other words, it must come really from an act of parliament, not from the counties.
Yes.
But again, the counties are authorized to impose charges for services, and this is what I want to explain. Apart from what you see with regards to the rates for properties and so forth, or for taxes on entertainment, any other charges or levies that counties are charging must be for services that they render.
Right.
If they are not rendering services, they cannot charge. That would be unconstitutional. So if I impose a tax on chicken, really, it must be what services am I providing to that farmer? Because that's the essence, that provided for in the, because what the Constitution really says is that county governments are to be financed from the national taxes.
So according to you, there's some failures in as far as the county governments and how they're going about it, because even with the protest, that's just an indicator. You mentioned there, as you read, public participation. These people are protesting because they were not consulted. These governments are just going out there and saying this is what is going to happen without mwananchi consultation and involvement.
Precisely. So that's why the Constitution is there, so that to the extent that there was no compliance with the law, then there's an illegality really. If you simply draft a finance bill and start charging taxes and rates or charges that have not been properly determined through public participation, it can be challenged in a court of law.
All right. Why would you then seeing your committee coming in, Bwana Senator,
now
and intervening in this kind of situation?
What we are doing, we have received a number of petitions from members of the public, from the private sector institutions. What we are developing is a set of guidelines in terms of law, really, that is going to guide counties with regards to the charges, with regards to the taxes, or revenues that they can raise at county level. I think we are doing this, and maybe in the next few months you'll probably see a bill in Parliament, and we've already looked at some of the draft bills that have been prepared.
So we'll see your involvement in trying to just
yes, we want to guide, because what the government did, let me tell you, in the last 15-20 years is to eliminate thousands. You remember there were up to 2,000-3,000 types of taxes and charges in this country before that were hindering business. that were hampering, enterprise development in this country. So what the government did over the last 2 decades actually is to eliminate most of those tax barriers and all those things to facilitate trade.
Yes.
So what these people are doing is to bring back that. So what we want to encourage the counties to do is to facilitate business, really, not to focus on regulation, not to focus on revenues only, because at the same time, what you are trying to do is to discourage investors.
Okay.
When you are just trying to get investors in your country, then by increasing, today what you see is that some of the cross-border, cross-county charges that they are charging, if your vehicle is branded and you move from Nairobi to Nakuru, and when you pass through Nakuru, you're told, hey, you have to pay something.
Yeah.
I mean, all those are things that we think are not acceptable, and the Constitution, let me just conclude, is clear on that. It says the taxation and other revenue-raising powers of the counties shall not be exercised in a way that prejudices national economic policies, economic activities across county boundaries, and the national mobility of goods and services across the country.
All right.
So, I mean, it's clear what they're doing is wrong, but the failure also is in the county assemblies, because when these things are done by the county executive, and it comes to the assembly, those are the people who represent the residents of that county, and that's the legislature. They should say, no, sorry, this is not acceptable.
This is not acceptable.
All right, but this is why we want to, as a Senate, come up with guidelines generally that will guide all.
So you're talking about coming up with these guidelines, but you've also read to us the law and what it says, which clearly shows that what is being done in many cases is illegal, is unconstitutional. So then, is there no way now, before this situation gets out of hand, that they can be, held accountable, because the situation is going to get worse? More and more counties will, join the bandwagon, raise the taxes. We'll see more levies. And at the end, ordinary Mwananchi is being hurt. So are we saying now, as your committee, there's nothing you can do now with the laws that are in place?
I think there's something that needs to be clarified clearly. Yeah. The county governments have powers in the Constitution to raise revenue.
Yes.
Now, that power must be exercised in accordance with the Constitution.
And that is what is lacking.
If there is a breach,
yes,
with regards to the Constitution, that is a matter then someone can raise the court of law.
Okay.
But there isn't really direct intervention that the Senate or National Assembly or Parliament can do immediately to say, okay, that law, finance bill from Kiambu or from this county or that county is an illegal document, and therefore.
So you're saying your hands are tied?
I mean, it doesn't. We don't have an overriding power as an institution to simply declare a particular law. That responsibility is for the courts. But what we are doing is we want to come up with a specific law that guides the institutions, that guides the counties with regards to how much really they can charge and what they should charge and what type of charges are acceptable, and so that we can really avoid all these unfair practices that we're seeing across the country. Because in one county, I'll give you an example, you find a mobile a Safaricom M-Pesa person in Nairobi, for example, he wants to put up a small bundle, is charged, say, 5,000. You go to another county, for example, I'm just taking as an example, in Busia, you'll find the same one is being levied 10,000. Yet this is the same service being provided. So what is happening is that it will be cheaper to provide that service in this county than in the other county. So the people starting business in that county will be discouraged. Okay,
let's talk about a little on the doctors' strike. And of course, we saw it past couple of weeks and it dragged on for a couple of days. And it is interesting about the fact that it touched a lot on the counties, because their issue was that they did not feel the counties were ready to take over the functions that pertain to healthcare. They did not have that capacity yet. And a lot of it also had to do with, remuneration and so public finance. But we didn't see a lot of the Senate. We didn't see the involvement, and yet it touched a lot on the counties and healthcare provision there, and it was the issues of money and how will this and the other work. What are your thoughts? Why did we see the county governments remain quiet?
Senate Committee on Health did express itself on that matter.
Right.
Before all this happened, there were 2 petitions submitted by the workers in the health industry to the Senate, and both petitions were dismissed by the Senate House on grounds that the reasons that they gave, that medical workers were giving, that their services should not be transferred to the counties, was unconstitutional and not acceptable, really. So in our view, really, the Senate had argued that as far as the Constitution is concerned, if that function has been transferred, so the employees in that department will all be transferred, the doctors and nurses. The second thing is that there was no question about the ability of the county governments to pay. County governments have been fully resourced nationally to pay these people. I think the issue really about the health sector is the public health workers not wanting to come directly under the supervision of the county executive. That close supervision, in our view, is what every resident of any county wants today because of the collapsed services in the public health, service in our country. If you go to any hospital in the rural areas, you have seen the situation.
Okay.
So bringing that directly under the control and supervision of the county government is the main essence of transferring that service. That's what the people wanted in the constitution.
All right.
But I think the employees really didn't want that kind of thing. But I think in our case, this constitution is very clear, and that's why the government also insisted that service must really go, and there's no two ways about it. And the money is not an issue. They get their salary. Their terms have clearly been set out. It cannot just be reduced arbitrarily or whatever. Everything is provided for in law. So that was not a concern. Their concern really was to avoid that immediate close supervision from the county that will make, but that's what we want. We want services improved in health in
the health sector.
Another
issue of concern, Senator, and since this system, devolution, came into being, is the issue of the spending, misuse of public funds. We've seen quite a number. If you saw the report recently on how the counties have been able to use their money, very few. Some didn't even have any allocation to any development work. A lot have seen some of these county governments spending quite some money in just their, luxury cars and all manner of things to just make their lives more comfortable, and not much being put in as far as development and as far as getting work started is concerned. And that has been an issue of concern as a committee.
Let me raise, it's a very important area you raised, because I really wanted an opportunity to discuss this thing. And I appreciate if you give me a couple of minutes to explain this. One is, if you look at the report by the controller of budget, because that's the report we're referring to, and today we're going to have a discussion with the controller of budget on that report. That report is not an audit report. The mandate of the control of budget is to review the implementation of the budget. To what extent has the national or county government actually spent money that has been voted for by Parliament?
Yes.
That's what it explains. If you allocated 10 billion, how much did you actually spend? And how much of that is recurrent and whatever? That's basically what it did. That report does not talk about any misappropriation of public funds.
Yes.
Absolutely, because that's the mandate of the Auditor General. At the end of the year, they'll do an audit and they'll explain whether there was misuse or not.
Right.
The second point I need to explain on that report is that was a report for the first quarter of this financial year, between July to September, for the 3 months. Now, the budgets of the county governments, which were done in June, because of the fact that there was a very short time when they came on board, to June, they were not done properly.
Right.
So the national government treasury, plus ourselves, the Senate, plus the controller of budget, had a meeting with all the county executives and requested that all the budgets be revised by 30th September for two reasons. One, to eliminate all those deficits in the budgets that we have seen, and to ensure that to remove all those expenditures which are not authorized in law. Some counties had put financing for county assemblies, allowances for county assemblies, and so many things. Eliminate all those things which are unconstitutional, salaries that are not provided for, and so forth, so that the budgets comply with the law. We gave them up to 30th September. So for that period where the audit, report relates to, there is actually very minimal expenditure. What happened is that the controller allowed its people a certain percentage of their money to cover basically personnel emoluments and operational expenses. But even this is why the focus was of that report was really on that area. The money for development was not utilized because most of the money was not released. What you will see is that in subsequent quarters is when you will probably see more expenditure on development. The second point is that and it's important because I need to clarify this. Counties, in that report, she gave all the reasons why there was more expenditure on recurrent than on development. And the three reasons she gave, one was on the capacity, that the counties were in the process of recruiting their team for the offices. Two, procurements for the counties are actually happening now for most of their development activities. From January is what most counties are doing. So it was really as a committee, and we're going to discuss this today with both the controller and the county, the Council of Governors and so forth. It was really, there isn't a cause for alarm because there isn't actually misappropriation in essence. What happened is that for that period, there was very minimal amount of activity in the development because
but still at the county level, Wananchi have felt that bottom line is there's still quite a number and huge amount of money that has gone into, misplaced priorities, if you like, in terms of just we're not seeing much still, even away from that particular report. You very well explained that, but even in just of helping with service delivery, putting money into development, moving forward, getting structures going and kicking. We're seeing just a lot of, this and the other functions you'd have imagined the transitional authority would have put in place so that the county governments in coming into place, then they're not, struggling with the same and looking like they're still trying to put house in order.
So the functions that have been transferred, one thing I would really urge Kenyans is to be patient.
Okay.
There are counties today that are still recruiting their county executive officers. There are counties that are still recruiting their chief officers. Counties are different levels of development, really, in terms of building their capacity of staffing. So to us, really, who are looking at what is happening in the counties, and we visited counties, we expect the takeoff of these counties to be sometime in the first quarter of this year, really, not earlier than that. So what we want to see is that in relation to the services that have been transferred, we want to see the impact of the county governments in those particular areas, not generally in every aspect of government. For example, I will give you in health. There was an arrangement between the national government and the county governments that the government will continue paying all emoluments, handling the payroll and everything of health until around end of this month. They'll actually then formally take over the health services fully from the beginning of next month. So it is true that some counties, in terms of their planning, in terms of their budgeting, their priorities may not, in our view, be a priority. But again, that is a responsibility of that county, because they have a legislative assembly that must sit and approve whether you or reject those particular whatever. So the thing is, in the essence, what really county government is about is a government of those people. So it's up to them to determine their county governor plus their county assembly and the public through participation to determine what are their priorities. And I think what happened in the first year, there was very poor public participation because of timing, and I think this year we want to insist, and we're bringing together, by the way, we plan to bring together our committee, all the public, all the county executive, plus the chairs of all the budget committees of the county assembly and the national government, to try and ensure that the budget for the counties next year is not what happened last time, that there is adequate public participation, and that their priorities are really
are in the right place, in right order.
So forth, so that we don't have that kind of stuff.
And sitting in the finance committee in the Senate, were you concerned late last year when we saw the MCAs pushing for higher pay? It dragged on for quite a long time. It was a back and forth between the SRC, the MCAs, and it was just after that, a few months after assumption to office, not much work done, and there we were to the conversation we've seen a lot of time happen with members of parliament, more and more money. Watching that conversation as it unfolded then, what were your thoughts as a committee?
I think it is a major concern, particularly to our committee, because it affected the approval of those revised budgets. This is why some counties, as late as last month, and I'm sure even today, there are counties that have not yet passed their revised budget because of the go-slow by the members of the county assembly. But I think the committees, relevant committee in the Senate, had very extensive consultations and discussions with the SRM's committee to try and address that issue. In our view, we have also, as Senate, had several sessions to discuss really the terms of MCAs and the impact of their go-slow on the operations of the county. And it's one of the reasons the control of budget cited in the poor utilization of resources in that first quarter. But I think it's a problem that we are seeing across many aspects of our society, that agitation of more better terms, agitation for more salary. We're seeing it in the health sector, in teaching sector, in MCAs, everywhere, really.
But it was just interesting. I mean, new leadership, and the next thing is we want more money,
Yes,
Kenyans are tired of that.
I think, but I think really for the one of MCA, the Senate has been quite sympathetic, in the sense that if you look at the role of MCA with regards to the county governments, that they must provide oversight. They must approve all their budgets, all their development plans, all the expenditures. They provide oversight and everything. They have a role similar to the National Assembly on the ground. The actual direct responsibility for oversight of the county government is with the county assembly. So if we looked at the terms that were given initially, it did not, the correlation really was not fair. And I think this is why the Supremacy Commission later upped the figures. And I think what has been offered now should be reasonable, should allow them to continue with their work.
Right. And a topic of our discussion this morning, devolution, is it too costly? Is the question on everybody's mind, because when this on paper, it looked amazing, beautiful. You're thinking, yes, devolved system of governance, services closer to the people, a management and a leadership that understands, will be nearer the people, understanding their needs and catering to them as well. But with this for the taxpayer, do you feel it is too expensive?
I don't.
You don't?
I would. That's why I urge Kenyans to be patient. What we will see, in my view, is that devolution will lead to the baking of a bigger cake in the next few years. These are teething problems initially. I mean, every new system or every new money, those challenges are there.
Yes.
So when this dispensation goes on for the next year or two, and all these things have been streamlined, I have a view myself that there will be more revenue generated. And I think this is a matter that I can really talk about for an hour on very good reasons why I think our GDP will grow and will generate more revenue in the long term if devolution kicks off properly.
Okay.
What we have are challenges in terms of, right now we are simply relying on whatever is available in the national treasury being shared out. But as we go on in future, I have no doubt that devolution will really lead to significant growth in the economy of this country. And I think that is the future. But I think there are a lot of challenges in the short term that many of us have to live with, in the sense that you find the duplication of activities, more people being employed in the county that are already there in the national government. These are challenges in terms of administrative arrangements that have not been done, and everything is still in a confused state. But I think this is going to be sorted out in the next couple of years. This is my view.
It will not be the same.
It will not be. I don't think so. I don't think so. I'm very hopeful that devolution will be very successul in this country in the next couple of years once we get over this challenge.
So it's the teething problems, you'd say?
It's the teething problems. That's my view. That's my view. Because one of the main issues that are being raised is the cost, is the public wage bill.
Yes, and that's what
and I think for me, this is a matter that we have discussed with the national government. What happens is that the constitution emphasizes a situation where if you transfer a function or service to the county, then the resources, both human and financial resources that were at the national level, moves. But we ended up in a situation where the financial resource has been moved, but the human resource has not been removed. It's retained in the national government. So you have paying for public wages in Nairobi, and you are paying for public wages in the county governments, because county governments ended up recruiting their own staff. I'll give you examples. For example, roads is one of the main priorities of many counties. They want to improve roads infrastructure in their counties. Nairobi county national government says, sorry, we are not going to let go, the functions of roads like Kura and Kera are carrying out currently. So what do the county governments do? Because they have money and they want to put money in their roads. So they end up recruiting their own engineers, they end up setting up their own road departments and so forth. Yet there is also an office from the national government that has got engineers and workers that are also handling roads, but which must only report to Nairobi. So what is happening is that duplication is there. But I think ultimately if national government puts its foot down and transfers all this staff whose functions have been transferred to the county governments, then that situation will not arise. And I think that is there. I saw a very vivid example in Garissa recently when we went there. I'll conclude with this. Forest, for example, except for gazetted national forests, all the other forest officers have been transferred as a function to the county government. So we had a situation where they were telling us in Garissa that the forest office there had about a complement of 20-30 employees, and the National Forest Office here insisted that those people must report to the national office here, and they do not report to the county government. So what do the county government officer in charge of forest do? He went ahead and recruited his own 100 fellows and sent them to Londiani for training, and he has got his own budget of 80 million, and he's going to run his own forest department. Yet the other one is sitting there. They have no finance, they have no resources. So that duplication is there, and I think it's something that, in my view, will be, teething challenges that will be resolved in the next
and are you that confident, Bwana Senator, and as far as, resolving these teething problems? Because one would argue that this devolution will die slowly, like we saw in the 60s. We had the system that worked out then, and then, this one, what makes you so sure that it will not as well just suffer?
We have, times have changed. We are not in 1963. People are more informed. And we all know as a public, as a Kenyans, what we want. This is why in drafting this constitution, Kenyans, one of their key aspirations was devolution. The reason is because of the skewed resource allocations that we have seen over the 50 years. There are certain areas that developed, others are not. So what Kenyans want really is your taxpayers. Everybody wants to see his tax benefiting him or her directly on the ground where they live. So I don't think the situation where the government will say, okay, devolution is, the government is committed to it. That I have no doubt. I've seen this government in particular is committed to it. Resources will continue being sent. That's why you see huge balances in central bank, because every month they have to remit the amounts due to the county governments.
Right.
With the legislative assemblies now on the ground, and public participation being a key component, and I think it will be developed. We're still working on how that public participation needs to be formalized in terms of regulation, so that it's not just counties going to hold a seminar hotel and walking away. But I'm sure that when people see, and they're already beginning to see, by the way.
Yes.
I come from Mandera County, and people are already very hopeful that they're expecting to see, and they're seeing it, they're beginning to see it. We have money, and people are seeing the money they've never seen before, and they're seeing it being spent. You'll see hospitals will be transformed. Schools will be transformed, roads will be built, and so many things. So I don't think it's going to be easy then for any government in future to try and strangle county governments. That's not likely to happen.
That's not likely to happen,
in my view.
Okay. Finally, Mheshimiwa, as we wind this up, in the past, last year, we saw quite again, could be described as one of the teething problems, but what was described widely as a supremacy battle between the National Assembly and the Senate. You're in the Senate in trying to find their space, the Senate and their roles and all. Do you think that has been resolved, or will we still see the squabbles here and there, with one suggesting that this is what should happen, this is the way we should go, or is that now clearly outlined, everybody knows what they should be doing and is happy and feels the other is playing their role, sticking to their lane, but working for the good of Wananchi?
I don't think we're out of the woods yet on that matter.
Yeah.
The High Court gave a very clear direction on this matter, and really is up to largely the National Assembly to comply with the provisions of the Constitution and to comply with the directions of the High Court.
Right.
With regards to the role of the Senate, that in terms of legislation, that touch on counties, and literally, I would say, except for money bills, virtually every other thing that we pass as legislation really affects the people in the counties.
Yes.
And the essence of the Constitution is about devolution, really, is to give the people the power to determine their future. That's basically what it is. It's sort of a self-autonomy, so that out there you determine what are your priorities, and you do what you think is right for your people. So anything that touches on the counties, I'll give you an example. In my view, even a simple decision like the laptop project for schools, this touches on the county, because in my county, is it a priority or is it not a priority? That's something that our county needs to determine. It's not for the national government to determine that your counties all need laptops. In my county, I would say I'll need power for schools first, and so forth and so forth. This is why every legislation, really, except those that are touching on money bills, must come through the Senate, so that in terms of the powers of the Senate of looking at the interests of the counties, we are also satisfied that the interests of the counties are taken care of. But I think as time goes on, I think I have no doubt that the two houses will move closer to each other, and will resolve. But I would say still we are not seeing, even after the court ruling, we are not seeing that commitment coming out clearly from the National Assembly. From the National Assembly.
Thank you very much, Bill Okero, Mandera County Senator, also the chair of the Senate Finance Committee. We appreciate you being with us today, clarifying on those very important issues we've been able to discuss this morning, helping us have an understanding of what the law does stipulate in as far as this conversation going down to devolution and the money, public finance, which is crucial because it's taxpayers' money. So everybody wants to have have that confidence that whatever it is at the end of the month I'm putting out there is going to the right use. We appreciate your time and thank you so much. We're glad you're watching Morning Express.